The red-haired pirates have just declared war against the Straw Hat Pirates. You may not have realized it, but that was the entire narrative purpose of this scene, the punishment of Bartolomeo. It was to set up the Straw Hats and red-haired pirates for their inevitable conflict in Elbaf. Because while this could easily be overlooked as a minor incident, the reality is that the red-haired pirates have just committed the one cardinal sin that is unforgivable to Luffy and the Straw Hat crew. You do not touch the Straw Hat's friends. Just as Shanks himself once taught Luffy that this is the one thing you can never allow, so too has Luffy adopted this creed for himself. As arc after arc, he has brought retribution against the strongest individuals on the ocean for harming his friends. And of course, while Luffy and Shanks themselves have strong personal bonds between each other, and by no means does this mean that Luffy will suddenly hate Shanks, that does not change the fact that this action is one that will prompt retribution from Luffy, as a lesson needs to be taught in return. We already know that Luffy will deal justice in this manner, even to those who he is close with. And more importantly, at this point in the story, Luffy is no longer playing at pirates like it's some harmless little kid's game. Luffy is a Yonko. Shanks is a Yonko. For the very same reasons that the red-haired pirates had to bring retribution for the tarnishing of their flag in order to maintain protection of their own subordinate fleets, so too is it now Luffy's responsibility to bring retribution for the assault on his subordinate fleets. This is the world of the Yonko. This is what it means to have territories. This is what it means to claim people under your flag and offer them your protection. This is what it means to have subordinates. So let me break down exactly why this incident is going to spark a genuine war between Yonko crews, and exactly how that war is set to play out, in a manner that won't ruin Luffy and Shanks' relationship, but will still make for a serious, high-stakes, genuine conflict. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. And if you want a smoother way to shave your body, you can get 20% off Manscaped's body grooming kit today. Manscaped is the sponsor for this video, and they just rolled out the most sophisticated luxury body groomer ever, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Gold. That's right, if you want to groom yourself in style, or if you want a sleek gift for someone you know, this is the most high-level manscaping device on the market, with next-gen, dual, skin-safe blade heads that make it honestly so easy to shave down there. With this, you never have to worry about getting any nicks or cuts in sensitive spots, because it's specifically designed to feel smooth on the skin. As you might guess, I'm often in a hurry because I am often late to events, so with this, I can groom myself pretty damn fast without worrying about getting any scratches. Seriously, with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Gold, I can be done in literally 30 seconds or less. And it just leaves a sleek and smooth finish that looks and feels good. So if you want to start actually grooming yourself well, or you're looking for the perfect gift for someone you know, just head over to manscaped.com and grab the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Gold now. When you use my promo code MORGE, you will get 20% off plus free international shipping at checkout. That's 20% off plus free shipping with my promo code MORGE at manscaped.com. So that aside, to begin with, Luffy vs. Shanks is a conflict that has been coming for a long time. From the very beginning of the story, Luffy made it clear that he wanted to surpass Shanks, and Luffy has repeated throughout the New World that he intends to go up against every single Yonko, and Shanks is very explicitly stated to be part of that plan. Shanks himself decided, after Luffy reached Yonko level, that it's now time to compete with Luffy for the One Piece. The conflict was always going to happen. The problem was that narratively, setting up this conflict was a very delicate matter, as it had to strike a very specific tone. On the one hand, Luffy vs. Shanks can't be a genuine antagonistic conflict of mortal enemies, the way Luffy vs. Kaido, Luffy vs. Big Mom, or Luffy vs. Blackbeard can be written, since at the end of the day, the actual bond between Luffy and Shanks is integral to the story and it needs to be preserved. Shanks is Luffy's savior, his mentor, and his protector throughout the story. Shanks literally gave up his arm for Luffy's sake. Not to mention, much of Luffy's journey has been about returning his hat to Shanks, so this bond needs to remain intact. The hat needs to be returned, the dynamic needs to be maintained. So on the one hand, whatever conflict Luffy and Shanks have, it could never have been some hate-filled bloodbath battle to the death like the Wano War. It always needed to ultimately be something a lot lighter, something that wouldn't shatter their relationship. But at the same time, Oda couldn't go too far in the other direction, and make it too light because stakes are important for conflicts. There needs to feel like there is some level of seriousness for a battle between two Yonko. It can't just be a, haha, I'm so happy to see you Shanks, let's have a baby backfight to see who's better now. We are simply too far into the story with too much emphasis placed on the geopolitical conflict of One Piece, and the seriousness with which every major figure treats it, for a conflict between two emperors to be a friendly little contest. There needs to be some added bite to the whole affair. And so the simple solution, perhaps the very solution that was foreshadowed from the creation of the Grand Fleet, was the Bartolomeo incident. It's the perfect catalyst for a Luffy-Shanks conflict. in that it invokes the most important value that both Luffy and Shanks care about: protecting their friends and subordinates. This is a value that they're both morally correct to care about, and as such, this conflict doesn't actually make either party the quote-unquote bad guy, but rather it simply forces both parties to face off as a matter of having to carry out their moral duties. It's not personal, it's not hatred between the crews, but it is serious business that must be done. I'm going to break down why this is from first the perspective of being a Yonko, and second from the perspective of Luffy and Shanks' personal shared moral code. So to begin with, being a Yonko is fundamentally different from being a regular pirate in that there is now the official responsibility of protecting territories. One's flag now carries weight behind it, the weight of protection and affiliation. We have seen that this flag has to be treated extremely seriously. A Yonko has to protect all of their territories and all of their subordinates that fly their flag, so the flag continues to hold meaning for everyone else that they're protecting. An assault on the flag that goes unpunished essentially threatens the safety of everyone else who relies on that flag for protection. And so Bartolomeo did something extremely stupid. While he was likely simply being overzealous and wanted to promote Luffy in favor of Shanks, burning the flag was an act that directly threatens the safety of everyone that Shanks protects. And we've seen what Shanks does to those that threaten the safety of his friends. And so Bartolomeo acts without thinking. This threatens Shanks' subordinates, which means that as a Yonko, Shanks now has to retaliate against Bartolomeo, which is an act of violence against Luffy's subordinate, which means that as a Yonko, Luffy must now also retaliate against Shanks. It's very simple, this is the way the world of the Yonko works. It was all technically Bartolomeo's fault in the first place, but it's resulted in a situation where the red-haired pirate's hand was forced, they had to harm Luffy's subordinate, and now that means that if Luffy is a true Yonko, he now needs to step up and get retribution for said subordinate. Remember, what the red-haired pirates just did to Bartolomeo is exactly the same as what Kid almost did to Shanks' subordinates. This is the exact same parallel situation. For the exact same reason that Shanks had to attack Kid for what he did, so too does Luffy now have to attack Shanks for what he did. In fact, Oda likely established this absolutely identical parallel scenario specifically to make this setup extremely cut and dry, black and white. This is the natural, necessary response from a Yonko for committing this act against subordinate. We expected Shanks to act in this manner against Kid, therefore Luffy should now be expected to act in this manner against Shanks. Now you may argue that Luffy doesn't exactly think like a traditional Yonko, and that's true, Luffy is more focused on finding the One Piece than being some kind of a big shot. However, Luffy has very clearly recognized that he's now entered a position where his title does have meaning, and his protection does have meaning. Luffy has been acting as a Yonko, he has been claiming territories, he has been telling his allies to fly his flag as a symbol of his protection over them. If something happens to Wano or Fishman Island, Luffy knows that he needs to come running to help. And the same goes for Luffy's subordinate fleets. Now you might argue that Luffy technically never accepted the Grand Fleet as his subordinates. It was technically a gray area wherein the Grand Fleet just established themselves as his subordinates, but they did drink the father and son's cups, and the Straw Hats themselves technically also drank the same cups even if it was without Luffy's consent. So while it's a gray area, you could argue that shooting down Bartolomeo is not quite the same act of war in the same way that Kid shooting down Shanks' subordinates was. However, that brings us to the second main point, which is beyond the technical responsibilities of a Yonko. What matters more is Luffy's own personal moral code. Even before Luffy was a Yonko, there was a code that he lived by, the very same code that Shanks taught him. No one is allowed to hurt Luffy's friends, ever. And Luffy most certainly considers Bartolomeo a friend. It's not just about their experiences together in Dressrosa. Oda made sure that Bartolomeo's relationship with Luffy was embellished beyond the rest of the Grand Fleet, as Bartolomeo and his crew were the ones who actually sailed Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats all the way from Dressrosa to Zou. They actually did this without even having a navigator. This additional trip is a huge deal, as it was a huge favor from the Barto Club pirates to Luffy and the crew. The Straw Hats were essentially stranded and helpless without Bartolomeo, and the simple fact that they had this extended journey together was likely a significant decision by Oda to make sure that Luffy does not forget Bartolomeo, and Bartolomeo's kindness in particular. Luffy is also obviously very aware that Bartolomeo is very loyal to him and that Bartolomeo considers himself to be Luffy's subordinate. And Luffy has also made clear that he does view the Grand Fleet members as his allies and that they can mutually rely on each other in the future. So for Shanks and the red-haired pirates to do this to Bartolomeo, very possibly killing Bartolomeo and his entire crew, this is an extreme act of violence towards one of Luffy's friends. And you have to remember that Luffy has flown into a rage even against his own first mate for actions like this. For the sake of people Luffy was nowhere near as close to as as Bartolomeo. What Shanks and the red-haired pirates just did to Bartolomeo, without question, will demand some sort of retribution from Luffy. Obviously, Luffy's not going to try and kill Shanks, especially whenever it's revealed that Bartolomeo is in fact alive, but the point is that this type of action will undoubtedly piss Luffy off and make him feel like some sort of payback is due. But before we get into it, if you love the world of One Piece, or you just want the opportunity to stream with me to share your One Piece ideas in front of thousands of viewers, I am excited to announce the Great Pirate Race. The renowned artist Dredge is bringing the entire world of One Piece to life, island by island, as travel posters for your walls. And Dredge is releasing these exclusively through the Morge channel. Each month, new batches of One Piece islands will be released to build the complete set. And this month, you can get Egghead Island, Whole Cake Island, and Wano to begin your collection. And Dredge is only making the Egghead, Whole Cake, and Wano posters this month, and then never again, so next month will be a new batch of islands as the collection continues. But the best part is, the posters themselves are tickets. If you have a lot of ideas about the series that you've been dying to talk about to a broader audience, then with your bundle of One Piece travel posters, you get an invite to join me on stream to talk about any One Piece theories or analytical insights that you have, or you can debate me live on any One Piece topic that you're itching to argue about in front of thousands of viewers. On top of that, you can also join me in a smaller private group setting in a happy hour that I'll be hosting this month for all viewers with travel posters. Plus, if you get the travel posters, you get a 20% discount on all other items in the Morge store, meaning our entire clothing line, all previous art pieces, and puzzles. You'll even get a high-quality bookmark of Luffy's iconic Bajrang gun attack, hand-drawn by Dredge, thrown in for free. And lastly, I told you this was the Great Pirate Race, right? Well, there's one final prize that one of you can get. Each month's bundle of posters comes with a code on the back to be solved. If you can put it together and follow the clues, the first person to solve the whole thing will get one final additional exclusive gift that no one else will get. And of course, you'll be announced and featured as the winner of that month's Great Pirate Race in one of my videos. So while Dredge's art pieces would ordinarily be $300 total, through the Morge channel you can get all three together, plus you get to live stream with me, an invite to a private happy hour, 20% off the entire Morge store, a Bajrang Gun manga bookmark, and a signed thank you from me. And of course, the opportunity to win the Great Pirate Race itself, all bundled together for just $250. And again, these three posters are genuinely only going to be printed and produced for this month of September and this month only. So hit the link in the description below to get your bundle. Grab this collection before it's gone. And most importantly, in this manner, the cause of the conflict would simply be perfect thematic writing. The entire lesson of Chapter 1 of One Piece, the entire point of what Shanks taught Luffy in this opening scene of the story, is that while you should never get into pointless fights, and while you should avoid violence at all costs, the one simple thing that you cannot let slide is when someone hurts your friends. That is the time that a man must act. And therein lies the beauty of this whole setup. The only reason Luffy will realize that he has to step up and teach the red-haired pirates a lesson is precisely because of the very lesson that they once taught him. You can't allow anyone to harm your friends. It is absolutely brilliant full circle writing that goes back to the very origin of the messaging of Luffy and Shanks' relationship. And once you realize that from the very beginning, Oda always planned for Luffy and Shanks' eventual conflict to be instigated by Luffy following through on the very lesson that Shanks originally taught him, suddenly so many other things become clear. Literally, the entire purpose of Oda creating this character Bartolomeo was to cause this very incident. Oda needed a character that would do something so stupid out of loyalty to Luffy that it would lead to retribution from the red-haired pirates, thereby causing a conflict between Luffy and the red-haired pirates in turn. And so Oda crafted the ultimate Luffy fanboy, someone who is so absurdly, delusionally devoted to Luffy that he often acts out of blind loyalty to Luffy rather than thinking rationally. Because it's not like Shanks and the red-haired pirates would ever go out of their way to hurt one of Luffy's allies or friends without reason. The whole point is Shanks never does anything violent unless one of his own friends is in danger of being hurt. So Oda needed to give Luffy a subordinate who would do something stupid that would unintentionally put Shanks' subordinates and allies in danger, which would thereby force Shanks to act in violence. Therefore, Oda invented Bartolomeo. Someone who wouldn't necessarily go out of his way to hurt any of Shanks' subordinates, but would be dumb enough to burn a flag, which by extension puts Shanks' allies in danger because Bartolomeo isn't thinking of the consequences. That's why Oda also made sure that Luffy and Bartolomeo spent plenty of time together, establishing them as friends and allies, technically even boss and subordinate, and then had Bartolomeo do something so stupid that it forces Shanks' hand, which now in turn forces Luffy's hand, and voila. Just like that, the perfect Luffy and Shanks conflict has been created. It's not one born out of hate or genuine animosity, but both of them have to perform their duty as Yonko. And more importantly, they both want to uphold their own moral code, which is to never let anyone, no matter who it is, hurt one of their friends. Again, the two parties may likely land on a Davy backfight as the method to settle this dispute, but it will be a Davy backfight with a much higher level of stakes to it. It won't just be for road poneglyphs, as Luffy's genuine intent will be to teach the red-haired pirates a lesson, and establish that no one, not even Shanks, is allowed to hurt his friends, thereby proving to Shanks that Luffy really is as special as he always believed, because in the process Luffy will be demonstrating that he took Shanks' final lesson from childhood to heart, and grew up to be exactly the type of man that Shanks always hoped. So let me know how you think their war will play out in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like and subscribe. And you can support me on Patreon for my extended thoughts on this and all future topics on my weekly podcast. Link in the description below. And make sure to get your bundle of travel posters for this month of Egghead, Whole Cake, and Wano before they're gone. And to get all of your additional perks listed here. Link in the description below.